Hello, and welcome to Friends of the LA River's Return to the River virtual event. My name is Marissa Christensen, and I'm President and CEO of FoLAR. I'm pleased to welcome you to Return to the River, a month-long celebration of all things LA River, starting with our weekend segments right here at River's Edge. This month we'll be featuring experiences and partners from all across the watershed. But before we get into that, I know that 2020 has brought so many stressful and oftentimes frightening challenges to each of us. It's at times like these that we turn to our friends for support and appreciate the often overlooked and simplistic beauties of life. The river is one of those simplistic and overlooked beauties, and a friend to each of us, which is why we've gathered here at the river in a safe and convenient way for us all to connect, to learn, and hopefully to feel a little bit of levity in these trying times. Together with our inspiring partners, you'll have opportunities to meet the river animals that call river home, hear river lore, and get crafty with river flora. You'll also learn about ways that you can get involved in your local community to help take care of the river and its future. Each week we'll be exploring a different topic. This week it's healthy urban ecosystems and how healthy urban ecosystems lead to healthy cities. And most importantly, the very crucial role that the river plays in our ecosystem. A special thanks to our returning premier sponsor, M2O, and our presenting sponsors, Postmates and Toyota Financial Services, for making Return to the River possible and for your continued partnership. I also want to thank all of our sponsors, our funders, our partners, and our volunteers for working with us and believing that the river can be equitable, publicly accessible, and ecologically sustainable, and this future for it is necessary. At River's Edge is a 3-weekend event. Follow along on Facebook and YouTube to get involved in each week's River Challenge and to see the videos as they are released. You can also join us every Thursday for River Trivia to compete for prizes and bragging rights. And I hope you will all consider supporting our work by joining us at our virtual gala this year, Noche del Rio. It's on October 23rd. We'll be celebrating art and the river, and of course, honoring our late poet founder, Lewis McAdams. Tickets start at just $10, and your contribution will help us propel the river movement forward. You can find out more at FoLAR.org. And now, without further ado, enjoy at River's Edge, and thank you for making your return to the river with us.
Los Angeles, the improbable city of dreams, willed into existence by people pushing the limits of human engineering and imagination. The likes of William Mulholland, who saw water where water wasn't.
Wait, what's this? Could it be? Of course. To the close observer and to indigenous people, this region has always had a river coursing through the heart of the city, the Los Angeles River. For more than 10,000 years, the Los Angeles River has provided a source of life and kinship for the inhabitants of the region. Join us as we explore our unique urban ecosystem and work towards rewilding the LA River through education, advocacy, and engagement. Return to the river with Friends of the LA River.
Return to the River is made possible by M2O, Postmates, and Toyota Financial Services.
And a special thanks to our newest sponsor, Amazon, for making Return to the River possible.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Liliana Griego. I'm here at the Sepulveda Basin Wildlife Reserve that is home to over 200 bird species that was recently burned by a wildfire. Today we're going to go explore and search for some of our feathered friends and also talk to some folks about all the wonderful work they're doing to help improve the ecosystem in this area. We usually see different herons, green heron, blue heron sometimes, some egrets, lots of mallards, coots, Canadian geese. Sometimes you can find white pelicans here. I don't know when they come exactly, but
my name's Tom Ryan. I've been working with FoLAR on doing the bird surveys out here at the Sepulveda Basin, and this started out as a study looking at recovery of sites that had been restored, and it has turned into a story on recovery from burns. So this is our third major brush fire in the year since we started this project. The area out here is the area that we think, needs to be restored. We tend to see a lot of small seed eaters out here, a lot of flycatchers, and last winter there was a burrowing owl that spent the winter out here. This was a nice little riparian corridor. It has since burned, and this spring we had at least 3 pairs of least Bell's vireos in here. We actually detected juveniles with the adults, which indicates that the nests were successful.
Since the fire came in, and we did find some here in the riparian area, and it definitely got affected by the fire, are they gonna have to rebuild their nests here, or do you think the babies are now big enough to just be on their own?
Yeah, the fire actually occurred at a fairly decent time in their annual cycle. We were reaching the point where some vireos have already migrated. If these guys hadn't migrated, they were probably just a couple weeks away from it. And, in all likelihood, as the fire came up, they moved into another habitat.
We can also hear a kingfisher.
Yeah, belted kingfisher.
Oh, it's just stopped right over there. Oh yeah, I can see it. Nice.
Some of the little flycatchers, a bird called the black phoebe. It's a very common flycatcher. You see them in parks around here, people's backyards.
We've seen a Cooper's hawk. I think we saw a red-tailed hawk already.
So she's out hunting over the recently burned area.
So that makes sense that they're out and about, because this is kind of an ideal situation for them, because now everything's exposed.
What we're doing out here is we're using what's called a point count technique in order to get a measurement of the bird abundance and diversity. So abundance is the total number of each species out here, and then the diversity is the number of species we encounter. So I stand here and I count everything that I detect within 30 meters or about 100 feet radius around me. Then I separate that and then count everything beyond 30 meters. If something just flies across the site, we get a lot of gulls and ducks moving back and forth. We note those separately as well.
Have you noticed any major differences since the last time you came out here to now, given everything? Next to the riparian area?
Yeah, no, the overall abundance and the diversity of the birds is definitely down. The fire tends to initially benefit birds that eat seeds, just because that's kind of all that's left. Some of the ones that we expect to see out here would be the house finch, lesser goldfinch. You tend to see a lot of doves out here. Doves are great generalists, pigeons and doves.
And
there's a red-tailed hawk right up behind you. So that's a juvenile red-tailed hawk.
So how do you know it's juvenile, Tom?
It's got that big white bib on the chest, and then if you look at the tail, despite the name, it doesn't have a red tail.
There he goes. Oh, I think there's a Say's Phoebe. It's really orange on the bottom. Oh, okay, you just... It's just, I don't even know. I can't even see it with my naked eye without using the binoculars. It's straight this way in the... It's got to jump eventually. Oh, it just jumped.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Say's Phoebe, okay. It's a really pretty bird. I like the color.
And song sparrows, too. I've heard a couple. The hypothesis of the experiment is that we'll have equal numbers of both abundance and diversity in the areas that have been restored and the control sites eventually. All right, time's up. Time to move to the next spot.
So what's next, Tom?
Well, we actually just finished with the first year of the study. We were funded for a year. Hopefully the surveys will be able to continue at regular intervals. You know, it's a very valuable little piece of habitat right here in the middle of the city, basically.
That's definitely a hidden gem.
Just needs a little bit of TLC.
Yeah. All right, well, now we're gonna head over and visit our friends from the California Native Plant Society. Thank you so much, Tom, for joining us this morning and for all the wonderful work that you do.
All right, well, thank you guys for doing all the work with the river and these adjacent habitats too.
I'm Vice President of Programs for Friends of Los Angeles River, and we are now in the Sepulveda Basin Wildlife Reserve, and we're joining some volunteers from California Native Plant Society to talk about all the work that they've done in here for decades. Steve!
Hey there, Shelley.
It's good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Virtual hug. So we'd love for you to tell us about what you're doing here and why and how.
The Sepulveda Basin Wildlife Reserve started off being cornfields, then it was a turf farm for a little while, and then finally we got a wildlife reserve here in 1988. The problem is that there's a lot of weeds that are left over from the time that it was in agriculture. So over the years we discovered that people walking along the trail here we're just walking through fields of mustard like you see the dried remnants of right here. People thinking that mustard is native, but it's not. It's an invasive plant from the Mediterranean region that was brought here by the Spanish missionaries, of course, because it has lots of value as a food item. There's really no life in it. There's nothing there for birds to eat, does not have any insects on it because they're from somewhere else, and so therefore it's of no value for the wildlife. By eliminating the mustard, we create habitat space for our native plants. The other thing the mustard does is that it actively puts chemicals in the soil that inhibit the growth of the native plants. Underneath the mustard is our nemesis, horehound, which is another medicinal herb from the Mediterranean that was probably brought by the Spanish missionaries. We have to actually do a lot of manual work because even if we were to herbicide it, you can't herbicide this horehound that's deep inside the coyote bush right here. You might be wondering, who's here doing this work as volunteers? Well, this is the California Native Plant Society. This is the Los Angeles Santa Monica Mountains chapter. We have our volunteers George Waddell, Robert Grziliak, and Ann Abramson. We've been working on this project with others for over a decade. We've cleared out thousands of bags of weeds over the years and really got this area so when you used to walk along the main trail, you would really see a slice of Southern California riparian ecology that was true to form.
Can you give us a little bit more about what we can do and what we're working toward, the vision of when we can get this mustard eradicated?
So now that we have this wonderful opportunity where most of the wildlife reserve has burned and most of the mustard has been eliminated, the Native Plant Society is going to work on a 3-year project to try to eliminate all the mustard in all the areas that have been burnt, along with all of any other of the non-native plants that would come up. Basically, keep the wildlife reserve weed-free, and it'll attract the kind of birds that we used to have, including the federally endangered least bell vireo that we used to hear regularly, even up until right before the fire. George Waddell, he's made over 5,000 seed balls, which we're going to scatter throughout the wildlife reserve.
George, can you talk to us about kind of what we see as a vision for this area?
What it is a prairie. It's an annual prairie. The plants come up, and when it rains, the plants come up, they flower, they set their seed, it gets dry, they die. What we found is that if you get rid of the mustard for about 3 years, it's very weak after that. It doesn't come back very much. And the native plants are able to take advantage of the poison's not in the soil anymore, and they can just go. We have prairies in California. We have native prairies. When John Muir came into the Central Valley for the first time, when he walked across to the Sierra, he talked about just walking through bloom all the way. And that's what should be here. I'm bringing seeds from my own garden. I got 5 different kinds, and I'm making mud balls out of them. Little balls like marbles. Each one has maybe 40 seeds of 5 different kinds in it. I'd like to have that across the entire area. Something like that could be extremely beautiful, and the seed feeds the birds.
It would be great if we could walk over and you could show us the project that you did with funding from the Xerces Society.
Last fall, we got word about the Xerces Society was giving a grant to allow people to plant pollinating species. They supplied us and many other groups with 1,600 little starts, little bitty baby plants. The most important was milkweed, because they're very concerned about the loss of the monarch butterfly. They need to have patches of milkweed that they can lay their eggs on.
George, thank you so much. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for what the California Native Plant Society has done and continues to do here.
Every time I come out here, I see something that I've never seen before. That's why our volunteer group meets twice a week, 6 at dawn. We work about 3 hours, and we've been doing it for over a decade. So it takes a combination of public involvement and the city to maintain the infrastructure and whatnot for it to really work. And of course, this is considered a world-class urban wildlife reserve, something that Los Angeles should be proud of and work really hard to work towards bringing it back and making it as good as it used to.
The great thing is that we've started with funds from Prop 1. That's got us to this point. So a year's worth of funding, a year's worth of activity. There's more to be done. We look forward to going back and continuing this work. There's a plethora of wildlife here in the heart of the city, so close to the LA River. Why should we have to drive to the Antelope Valley to see wildflowers? We've got 60+ acres here just ready for us to get to that day when we can throw out the seed bombs that George's been making. And we hope that you join us to do that. Thank you for tuning in on this Upper River treasure. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Finding Feathered Friends is brought to you by REI. We hope you learned something about climate change and our local ecosystems in Sepulveda Basin. We take you now to Encino, where the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians welcome us to Siutcanga.
Paco que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, mea que ma'a, mea que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, mea que ma'a, mea que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, mea que ma'a, mea que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, mea que ma'a, mea que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, Paco que ma'a, mea que ma'a, mea que ma'a. Aha, 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 aha.
Haminatam, my name is Pamela Villasenor. I'm a citizen of Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. Welcome to the village of Siutcanga here in Encino on the upper Los Angeles River. Los Encinos State Park hasn't always had this name. Before that, it was Rancho Encino during the Mexican-controlled era. But before that, and still today, we refer to it as the village of Siutcanga, a place where my ancestors are from, a place where my people still go to today, and a place where my daughter and future generations will continue to visit as the original, continued, and future caretakers of the land.
My name is Rudy Ortega Jr. I'm the tribal president of the Fernandeño and Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. I'm also a commissioner of the Los Angeles City County Native American Indian Commission. I'm the vice chair. I'm also a board member of the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy. We're about a few miles just south of the LA River. And this village has a natural spring, and the water at times warms up during the seasons, and it's always constantly flowing. And you can look at the old maps of Los Encinos. You have multiple oak trees that started to go westward. It was actually an ancient Indian trails, the tribal trails itself. And those trails, essentially, we now see that many roads, highways, the 101, follow a lot of the old trails that village to village will go through.
The people of Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians descend from many different villages from throughout the valleys of San Fernando, Santa Clarita, Antelope, and Simi. Of all these villages were many different tribal ethnic groups. So there were people who were Chumash, people who were Tataviam, people who were of Pipimaram lineages, and others. And today, when you look at the tribe's name, Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, Fernandeño is just the Spanish name to show affiliation with San Fernando Mission. Tataviam is just one of our tribal names because we couldn't fit all of our tribal names in that. So asking someone where they're from when they're tribal, they might give you the legal name of their tribe. But if you get to know them and ask the family, well, who are your people? It might be a very different answer.
The history of my ancestors to this area dates back centuries. This village, the Siutcanga, was essentially a key element of our families. It was actually land granted to my great-grandfather, Francisco Papa Bubaba, who was from Tochonanga originally. He married his wife, Pala Cayo, who was from here, from Siutcanga herself. And it was protected. It was 1 league, 4,200 acres of property that many people found safe haven here in this area from all the different villages. And the family, Vincent de la Osa, swindled the property from my great-great-grandmother.
This is our great-great-grandfather. He's the one who is the son-in-law to the land grant owner. You know, even the old Hispanic families that are from like the first settlers into Alta California, you know, even most of them don't really know the history. You know, they'll be like, oh, my family are the ones that helped, you know, homestead or settle, you know, parts of Chatsworth or things like that. And then slowly over time, the whole native part disappears, and then you're left with is like, oh yeah, my family were the first here, without really knowing the true history of the people who were here first. So, I mean, the important part is learning the correct history, and then, you know, moving forward with that history.
One of the interesting things about tribal people is understanding our connection to the environment. Water is not just about what we put into our body as for hydration. Water is older than us. It is our relative, it is wiser, and it provides us what we need to survive, and also serving our uses and needs for ceremony. And if you look at the tribe's legal cases, so many of them were hotly contested for our land rights that included water as part of that land. So for us, the problem has not always been a fight for land. It was really a fight for the water. That is what the settlers wanted. They wanted access to that water, and the land was just an extra for them. And if you take that a step further, what did that mean for our ceremonies? How did our ceremonies have to adapt and change in order to deal with settler colonization and the massive dispossession of our people? It's important to note that even though our people no longer own this land or are permitted to occupy this land, we fought for this land. In the Spanish times, to the Mexican control times, and even in the American period. My grandma, Maria Rita Alipas, was 24 when she was embroiled in a state Supreme Court case to defend this land. That was in the 1800s. That's a time when a war was on Indian people, a time when California was funding the genocide of our peoples, and a time where we didn't have U.S. citizenship. Women didn't even have rights. And so I wonder how she must have felt at 24, being involved in a state Supreme Court case. She had no citizenship, no rights as a woman, and no rights as an Indian. And yet she fought for this land, and she won. Today, we no longer have title to this land. But we ask that question, why can't this land return to the tribe? The tribe now has a Tataviam Land Conservancy, where our goal is to continue preserving our homelands for environmental reasons, for hydrology reasons, and for cultural reasons. And we are grateful for the Friends of the LA River and for all of the intergovernmental agencies and local community like you who are showing up to say that the LA River is important, and who are the indigenous peoples along this river, and how do we make sure their needs are being addressed. So now today in 2020, the tribe is asking, how do we have access back to the river, and what does that access look like? Because for us, it's more than just riding a bicycle. It is having that deep connection with our kin, the river, once again.
Go naiva, he wave naiva meadow. 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 Thank you.
Native Narratives is brought to you by M²O.
We thank the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians for sharing their story with us. If you'd like to learn more, and you should, find out more information online. There are many ways to foster a relationship with the river. In fact, right now, Ileana will share with us how to fashion a paper lantern out of products found at home and throughout the watershed.
Hi everyone, my name is Ileana Tataviam, the Education and Outreach Coordinator at Friends of the LA River, and welcome to our Eco Craft Corner. You might be wondering how art plays a role in our organization. Art really helps us express ourselves and think outside of the box, which I think is really important when we think about reimagining the LA River and reshaping our overall environment. Today we will be making some DIY pressed flower paper lanterns. It's a pretty simple and easy craft, but it's very fun and it's a really great way to get creative, to go out in nature. Today we will be decorating our paper lanterns using some plant pressings. So you want to go out and collect your flowers ahead of time, maybe 4 to 5 days before you get ready to make your actual paper lantern. Perhaps you want to prioritize some plants that have already fallen and that are dried. I collected these from an ash tree in the mid-river. This is from a willow tree, also from the mid-river, and these are from around my neighborhood. This is a fuchsia flower from the mid-river, and these other smaller flowers here are from the upper river. You collect your plants, take them back home, and place them in between paper or cardboard, and then you want to add significant weight on top. To press my plants, I place them in between 2 pieces of cardboard, and I place some heavy books on top. And give them a few days for them to dry. I encourage you to go out and explore your urban nature and bring back some nature into your home. To make your paper mache, you'll need water, flour, salt to prevent mold, a fork to mix it all up. We have balloons, scissors, paper that we're gonna start shredding and tearing up, string, glue, a hole punch, and some tea lights. So making paper mache is quite simple. You'll need about equal parts flour to water. I used all-purpose regular flour. And I'm just gonna use this fork to mix it all together. You wanna get it about the same consistency as cake batter. And you wanna sprinkle some salt in. You'll need about a teaspoon. The salt will help prevent mold and will also help your lantern last longer. And now you're ready to get started. Now I'm gonna blow up my balloon, which will serve as our mold for our paper lantern. The size of your balloon will determine the size of your lantern, so it depends how big or small you want it. The next step is to tear up our paper, which will be our base layer. You could use any type of paper, really. You could use newspaper, recycled paper, but the thinner the paper is, the more light will be shown through the lantern. We want about 2-inch wide strips, and it definitely doesn't have to be perfect. I'm also going to tear up my tissue paper into strips as well. And I'm doing this now while my hands are dry. It'll just make it easier. So before you get started, I recommend laying out some newspaper because this craft will get messy, but that's what makes it fun. I have my mix here. I have my strips of paper, I have my balloon, some extra water in case I need it, and we're ready to get started. You want to dip your piece of paper into the mix and remove any excess. Now I'm going to start layering my strips of paper, and you don't want to cover the entire balloon, you want to leave the top open. And as you go, you want to kind of remove any excess paste that you might have. It'll prevent clumping. Now I'm going to layer on the tissue paper, which is optional. I like the way that the tissue paper looks on top. It makes everything kind of look more put together. And your first layer will already be sticky enough for your tissue paper to stay. So once you're done covering your balloon, you're going to want to hang it up to dry somewhere. I'm just going to tie this string, and it'll take about a day to dry. So after your paper mache dries and you're ready to start decorating, you want to remove your balloon. So I'm going to gently pop it. Now that you've got your dried paper mache lantern, you're ready to decorate. So this part is the most fun because it's when you can make your paper lantern unique to you. So bring out the dried plants, flowers. You'll want to use glue to place your flowers, your leaves down. These leaves came from an ash tree from the mid-river, so along the Glendale Narrows. So I recommend not using twigs because that won't really stick so well. I think it's pretty much decorated. I just completed decorating my paper mache lantern. I feel like this lantern represents the LA watershed because I got some leaves and flowers from the upper river, from the mid river, and also from around my neighborhood. For your final step, we're gonna hole punch either side. And if you don't have a hole punch, you might wanna use a pencil or a pen to make holes. And I'm gonna grab some string and tie it through each end. I'm going to grab my battery-powered tea light, and we don't want to use a regular candle because of fire safety. And it's ready to be hung.
We would love to see how you put together your paper lantern. What paper did you use? What kind of plants? Share your work on Instagram and tag @FoLAR.org.
EcoCraft Corner is brought to you by Superba Food and Bread and Toyota Financial Services.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. If you decide to make a paper lantern at home, be sure to post on social media and tag FoLAR so we can share with others. Now it's time for your River Report.
Coming to you remotely from LA River Studios in Los Angeles, California. This is the River Report.
Hello, and welcome to our first in-studio edition of the River Report. I'm your host, Michael Atkins, Senior Communications and Impact Manager at Friends of the LA River. Since the start of the pandemic, our entire team has striven to bring you live stream updates on the ebbs and flows of the river and FoLAR. Today, it is my pleasure to keep you current with the LA River and the river movement. Today's segment is generously sponsored by Postmates and Foresight Real Estate. A special thank you to these partners for supporting our nonprofit in uncertain times and for making Return to the River possible. You've been watching At River's Edge, the first weekend in our 3-week exploration of the upper, middle, and lower sections of the LA River. I'd like to give you a quick review of some of our great programming before I welcome today's guest, Damon Nagami, attorney with the Natural Resource Defense Council, to learn about the steps NRDC and our state government are taking to build resilient communities in the face of climate change. This week's program pulls healthy ecosystems into sharp focus and began near the headwaters of the LA River in Sepulveda Basin Wildlife Reserve.
This started out as a study looking at recovery of sites that had been restored, and it has turned into a story on recovery from burns.
In early September, a wildfire burned through 20 acres, or approximately 60% of the reserve, including a habitat restoration site that our friends in the California Native Plant Society have been tending to diligently for years. FoLAR has also proudly supported an ongoing bird survey in this region to measure the impacts of habitat restoration on bird life. Some viewers may recall our volunteer effort last November, which drew over 100 volunteers to Sepulveda Basin to remove mustard seed. We removed mustard seed, a flammable invasive plant species, in order to make room for drought-tolerant and fire-resistant native plants. The same day we filmed our Finding Feathered Friends segment, the City of LA passed a motion to launch a master plan effort for Sepulveda Basin, seeking to examine opportunities for increased access, streamlining decision-making, and building a framework for future investments to this special jewel of the upper LA River. This is a process that will require community participation, so stay tuned to FoLAR as we continue to track this development. Thanks to Liliana and Shelley for showing us all the great work our friends in the California Native Plant Society have been conducting with support of the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. The effort to restore native habitat is ongoing and community-driven.
You can participate in the California Native Plant Society's effort to remove non-native plants any Tuesday or Thursday, dawn until 9 a.m. in the Sepulveda Basin. To sign up, contact our friend Steve at naturebase@aol.com. Next, I'd like to welcome a dear friend of the Friends of the LA River onto the River Report. Damon Nagami, attorney with the Natural Resource Defense Council and advisory board member with FoLAR, sat at a safe social distance apart from me earlier this week. Here's what he had to share.
My name is Damon Nagami. I am a senior attorney with the Natural Resources Defense Council. At NRDC, we work to safeguard the earth, its people, its plants and animals, and all life upon which it depends. We work on all kinds of environmental issues. I direct our Southern California Ecosystems project, which is protecting parks and open space, protecting communities from the impacts of oil and gas drilling here in Southern California, and then increasing access to nature for folks in park-poor communities. We've had a long history with Friends of the LA River. We've been working closely on restoration activities and advocacy for many years. Our focus has been increasing green space along the river and just, like I said before, increasing access to nature for folks in communities that just haven't had that space historically.
Thank you for that, Damon. With such great challenges that are facing us both locally, nationally, and globally, the river can actually feel quite small. Where in your eyes does the river fit into this big picture?
Actually, I don't think the LA River feels small at all. If anything, I think now is the time for big, ambitious projects like restoring the LA River. We're in the midst of a pandemic. There is racial unrest and uprisings. And we're in the middle of a climate crisis. And all these things are hitting at once, but they're also all interrelated. And I think that's when you need big, ambitious projects like river restoration that hit on all of those levels. We need cities to find ways to make themselves more climate resilient. We need to increase access to nature for communities of color to make sure that folks have access to the both physical and mental health benefits that nature provides. Restoring the LA River hits on all of those bases. We need that type of ambitious vision and project now more than ever.
All these things are challenging because we're having breakdowns left and right. In this climate, what type of political change can we really expect or predict or work towards?
At the federal level, right now, we're looking at a complete abdication of responsibility in terms of what's happening with the climate crisis. Fortunately, states and other countries have stepped up to try to fill that void. And just last week, Governor Newsom announced a suite of climate initiatives to try to tackle this crisis head on, including setting a goal to make sure that all of the cars that are on the roads in California are electric by 2035. And it's ambitious, it's audacious, that's the type of climate leadership we need. One sort of guiding principle or goal or vision that some groups, including NRDC, are starting to organize around is known as 30 by 30, and which is to conserve 30% of our lands, waters, and oceans by 2030. It is something that we're going to need to do to stave off the two crises that we're facing in terms of the climate crisis, but also a biodiversity crisis.
One more subject I want to cover before we conclude is hyperlocal, which is FoLAR and NRDC have been working very closely for a number of years, opposing the luxury loft known as Casitas Lofts. This is a development that overshadows the future Bowtie State Park. Why do we oppose it, and where do we stand now generally with the project?
This is an important campaign. This is something that, NRDC, we were invited in to help out. There was a concern about these projects coming in and trying to take advantage of, this public investment. The term green gentrification has been coming in because there's this fear from the communities that are already here that these amenities are going to come in and they're going to be great, but then the existing communities are going to be pushed out. And we would like for those communities, especially lower income communities of color, folks who have been here for generations, to be able to enjoy these amenities that are being planned for those communities. So we are pushing back against these proposed luxury housing developments that threaten river restoration activities and the 100-acre vision at the bow tie and Taylor Yard. They exacerbate potential displacement and gentrification of communities, and they do nothing to solve the housing crisis, the affordable housing crisis that we're facing here in Los Angeles. We found this groundswell of concern and opposition right here in the community. So tapping into that, mobilizing folks to raise their voices, make their voices heard, especially in the process of this development trying to get its permits through the environmental process. It's been exciting to see the community really come out, and FoLAR and our other partners like Clock Shop have really been instrumental in mobilizing the community and making sure that folks are having their voices heard.
We are definitely going to be keeping the pressure up, but also just reflecting on your answers. There's still something so great about our coalition in that it's, we're bringing in legal expertise from NRDC, different neighborhood expertise from neighborhood councils, and then also we're all having maybe overlapping but still slightly different audiences, which I think is also attributing to our ability to maybe make it one of the more notable oppositions to a project, in a given year, in a given 5 years with planning.
What you said about community expertise really resonated. I think that's something that we are really trying to drill home, which is what I want to do is lift up what communities are doing and what is important to the communities that are facing environmental injustice. There is expertise in communities. So every time you and your colleagues are out there in the community talking about these hyper-local issues and the impacts that are happening right in your own backyard, we need to hear from folks. We need to hear from people about what is happening in your community, what's related to climate change, where are the sources of pollution, and then on the positive side, what do you want to build for the future? And that's why I like the river, the LA River, trying to restore it. It is both addressing a long line of environmental injustices that have happened over decades, but then trying to find, okay, what is the vision we're going towards? It's a greener future. It's a more natural future. It's about getting back to where we were before. And that's what's always just attracted me about FoLAR's work. So I'm really proud to be working with you all, and can't wait to get started on what's coming next.
Once again, Damon, thank you for sitting down with me at social distance, for coming all the way out here to the LA River studio. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. Thanks for the great support.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
You heard it here first, folks. We are committed, as Californians, to practice leadership on climate issues, which requires all of us, from agencies to advocates, to embrace equitable solutions to thorny, long-standing issues. Thanks again to Damon for appearing with us. On behalf of FoLAR, we're so grateful for the partnership with NRDC and look forward to great things to come. Next, I'd like to highlight a very special series, a part of Return to the River. Los Angeles is home to the largest indigenous population of any American city, and yet we listen all too infrequently to their perspectives and wisdom. We are delighted to have the opportunity to meet with and interview members representing 3 of the local tribes of indigenous people. Kicking off our 3 weeks of learning, we met with the Tataviam Fernandeño Mission Band of Indians.
My tribe has a petition seeking federal recognition under the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA.gov, and you can write a comment letter saying that the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians descends from the historical community of Fernandeño people who are San Fernando Mission Indians, the villagers of Siutcanga, Cahuenga, Tujunga. My tribe is petitioner 158. You need to file directly to the tribe and as well as the Office of Federal Acknowledgement before or on October 14th.
I implore you to watch the full segment. For present-day river advocates, we must recognize the importance of practicing solidarity and amplifying indigenous voices. We are occupying their land, and it is our duty to assist in their efforts of federal recognition. Right now, you can support their effort by writing a comment letter to the Bureau of Indian Affairs within the Department of Interior.
Their comment window expires on October 14th, in 1 week, so don't delay. You can find more information by tuning in to FoLAR on social media or searching for Petitioner 158 within the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We'll be sure to share links with you to support this effort. We know that these uncertain times of pandemic have saddled parents and educators with even more burden to provide activities to young people to keep them occupied and engaged. That's why we're thrilled to present EcoCraft Corner. Our resident education and outreach coordinator, Ileana, shares with us one of her favorite crafts as she instructs us how to fashion a paper lantern out of household products. She decorated her lantern with flora she found along the watershed. If you are looking to flex your creative muscles and construct your own paper lantern, we want to see it. Be sure to post to social media and tag FoLAR so we can share with others for inspiration. These crafting opportunities are a great complement to our free Source to Sea curriculum, engaging students from 3rd to 12th grade to learn about the river and its importance to our ecosystems and communities. You can learn more and access the lessons at folar.org/edu. Well, that just about wraps up this edition of the River Report. If you enjoyed today's premiere, learned something, or laughed, we kindly ask for your support. Support FoLAR by donating at folar.org/donate now, or better yet, join us on October 23rd at our annual Noche del Rio Gala. Just like all things this year, we've gone virtual. This special program will broadcast for paid viewers. Our evening will celebrate the legacy of our late poet founder, Lewis McAdams, and honor river luminary Lauren Bond and Metabolic Studios. Also, we'll feature more creative cameos from local artists and FoLAR staff. This is a great chance to support FoLAR. Premium ticket holders can enjoy a kit of fine products delivered to their door, or you can order a $10 general admission ticket and join in on the fun while supporting FoLAR. Learn more online at folar.org/Noche del Rio. Well, that's it for me. This has been Michael Atkins with your River Report for October 3rd. Be sure to tune in next week to keep current with the river movement. Bye for now.